bank. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Ayy, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast. Ayy, ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss. Ayy.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do, or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Friday, everybody. I got a couple of very special guests for you guys here. This is a topic that I think is, like I've said before, you guys, I think a lot of what we're dealing with fraud and everything, and carrier identity, and really all provider identities, is it's only going to get worse before it gets better. I think that the current administration is dropping the hammer on this at levels that I think are pretty unprecedented out there. And I think the fastest way for all businesses to show, like, hey, we're a legit provider, I think that is going to open up a golden age of trucking that I don't think has ever been seen before. I'm planting my flag on this. I've mentioned it numerous times. You can sit here and talk about, is it necessary? But I think it is. I think that at some point, with the digital nature of where things are, your ability to prove that you are a legitimate provider in all industries is only going to become more and more valuable. So I have my friends from the NMFTA, Mr. Joe Orr and Marli Hall, back on the show. You guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, excited to be here.
No, I'm looking forward to it. And so SCAC Verified, you guys were on last month talking about this, and it's out, it's open. Let's talk about that a little bit here. Wow, what is it? It's fully live now, right?
Yeah, we launched it. So we actually deployed it Wednesday night. We didn't turn it on for good until Thursday morning. We wanted to give everybody we didn't want to flip the switch on something at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night, just because we wanted all hands on deck to support it. But it's kind of funny. We launched it, or we upgraded the servers 10 o'clock at night. And then somebody actually snuck in on the hour as we were upgrading. And so we actually saw somebody from South Carolina, we were just watching it, use it and successfully SCAC Verify the night of the deployment. And since then we went live Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And since then, we've seen 200 carriers that have utilized the system to start the SCAC Verify process.
So, for people out there who aren't aware, what is the purpose of a SCAC code for transportation and shipping entirely?
So what it's meant for is it's a code that is used for retail, but also it's cross-border. So when you cross the border, Border Patrol will use it to verify you are who you say you are, and it's associated with the company you're doing business with. So it's just like your DOT, your MC number. You have a SCAC code, and that SCAC code is managed by NMFTA. So you renew it once a year, and so it's on Class 8 or non-Class 8. But when you carry cargo across a border, or when you carry cargo for retail, they require SCAC, and it's part of the verification process that a lot of retail companies use. But it's also needed when you cross the border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, this is kind of like just been a thing for the entirety that I've been a broker, is having a SCAC code. The majority of the shippers of substance that I work with require it, at least in the setup and onboarding process. I look at, kind of like what I was saying before I pulled you guys up. I think that where we are right now, I think as a provider, the faster you can get to showing, like, hey, I'm not going to fall into these categories of, we don't have active insurance, or, we're chameleon carriers is the next, that's what everybody's talking about right now. And, a lot of these things that are getting a lot of attention out there in mainstream media. I mean, it's been a plague in the industry for a very, very long time. And I look at it as what are those little things that you can do to separate yourself from the competition? Because like, as somebody who cold calls shippers every single day, how do you really stand out in the onboarding process and like in the beginning stages? You really can't, because you're not going to say anything that they haven't heard before. But I look at like where things are now from an identity standpoint, where it's like, no, hey, you want to check the validity of my company? Here's my SCAC code. Check this out. This will show it, kind of like what we're about out there. So Marli, what was one of those things that, from an identity verification process that you think is kind of going to help service providers stand out in this next iteration of where things are in the industry?
So yeah, I mean, back to the SCAC Verified kind of announcement, right? We decided to do this and really bring it to the forefront. We wanted it to be meaningful. So we actually rolled it out at Manifest. So 7,500 supply chain professionals all in one space. So we thought that it was a great spot for that. But yeah, with this new initiative, it goes back kind of to that freight fraud component, right? So it's not just a data problem, it's an identity problem. So with the SCAC Verified and having that leg up, right, it just strengthens the industry's identifier by adding in that real ID verification component at issuance and renewal. And as Joe said, it's not, it currently is for non-Class 8 carriers. So we've, of course, been, tailoring our marketing and such to that, kind of a new space for us, right? Because we're purely just kind of on that Class 8 side. But no, just back to just checking those credentials, gaining that confidence that the entity behind that SCAC is legitimate. So we're happy to bring this kind of independent, trust signals that the brokers, platforms, et cetera, can rely on.
It's, I think that with because I think I talk about this quite often. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that there is like where the FMCSA currently is with their, all of their eyes are on one component of it. I think, and I know that I've had some guys on here who have been on the non-Class 8 side, box trucks, Sprinter vans, hot shots, stuff like that. It's only a matter of time. Like they're the next iteration of providers that are going to get the spotlight, because I think the FMCSA and the DOT have very much made it known, like we're coming after everything. Like we might only be here right now, but we will come after everything. And I think I think like this is where some of the fraud and scammers are able to kind of infiltrate, right? Because you don't necessarily need standard authority to run in some of these Class 8, non-Class 8s, Sprinter vans, box trucks, and everything else. And if you're one of the legitimate providers who operates this equipment, I want to open you guys up to the world of what I hear on my side of the fence. Like we specialize in open deck, right? We move a lot of freight on hot shots, and it is actually very concerning the amount of hot shot providers who will call in and try and book loads that don't actually have a DOT number. They don't have an MC. And then they were like, oh, my friend said I could use it. It's like, no. This isn't the way that this is going to work. So it's like, I look at it now, like, and I know you guys do a lot of stuff on cybersecurity, and that's kind of a different, topic entirely, but it's also one of those things where it's like, we have a complete cyber and digital footprint now for our business. And no matter how much you want to sit here and say that we only operate off of, spreadsheets and everything else, like the faster your company is going to be online. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, the FMCSA just put out a press release on like they are going in and they're going to be cleaning up all of their data. And I look at it as like, it's hard enough to make it in business. You delaying the inevitable here is only going to put you in a bad spot that could potentially cost you revenue down the road if you don't go in there, get your SCAC code up to date, get everything up to date, do it now instead of waiting until the last minute. And then it could get you, it could cost you a customer. I know, to me, it's just not worth it.
No, absolutely. And like you said, with the Class 8, yeah, they've got the DOT, they've got the MC, and we use that data as a point of verification. But for the ones that don't have the DOT, that don't have the MOs, that don't have the MC, and they're carrying stuff for retail or across the border, it's a point of verification that needs to happen. And as Marli mentioned, Manifest, we met with a lot of great vendors at Manifest that were selling a lot of great solutions, and they're starting to look into things like this, but they're doing it at the point of pickup. They're doing it at the point of drop off. At that point, it's almost too late, right? And I think it's a good solution. Don't get me wrong, but you want to do it further up. You want to do it when you're vetting. You want to do it as a point of verification way before you start that, before you hand that load off. You don't want to do it at the point of drop off. You don't want the person in your yard. You don't want them near you. You want to vet the carrier. You don't want to do it that late in the game. And so, we also do the address verification that I think is critical. And a lot of it is cargo theft, but it's also, we get calls where there's some bad things that have happened. And it's not just freight fraud. And so, there's a focus of this on drug trafficking, on human trafficking. And so part of this is just being able to assist law enforcement. And, it's interesting to watch not only the ones that are passing the verification, but the ones that decide, I'm going to abandon process. And we've seen a few that have done that they go in, they start the process, and they enter all the information. Then it comes to having to do the selfie, and they stop. And it's interesting. A lot of them are, to be honest, out of the country. The IP address is out of the country. And, I think that this is catching things that wouldn't have been caught in the past. Because now all of a sudden we have records. Once they're SCAC verified, we've got records. And again, it's not the end all be all. We know that, but it's an additional step of the verification.
So from a privacy standpoint, I think like that's got to be something that most people will be thinking about, right? Like, how is my data safe that I'm putting up there, especially biometric data, talking about the selfie that, you're describing there. How can you ensure that users of this, like everything is secure and it's not going to be, leaked out there?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we're actually, it's transactional. So the data does not come through our servers. It comes through a third party, and they are compliant, and they don't store the data at all. They do the verification, then it gets deleted. We see it for brief seconds, and that's it. And we make sure that they're SOC compliant, that they use the cybersecurity standards that we expect. And we've done a full audit of their process to make sure. But the key is nothing gets stored, because the last thing we want to do is store data that if leaked. Now, if needed, if there is an issue, we obviously have the names. But as far as like some personal information, we won't store that at NMFTA. Because we don't want to be the keepers of that data.
No. And I think that this kind of segues into another announcement that you guys are releasing here. With the freight fraud. Excuse me, that's a tongue twister. The Freight Fraud Prevention Hub that is being released. And for me, I look at it as collaboration is going to be the only thing that truly like puts a dent in this, right? Because I don't ever. As I've learned, the more and more I'm around the NMFTA and, again, to tie in the cybersecurity conference here, like it's never going to stop. It's constantly evolving. But the more we collaborate, the better, like the bigger of a dent we're going to be able to put into this and make it harder for the bad guys, right? Because it's like, if there's one thing I've learned is people look for the path of least resistance. They want that easy route in they don't want to jump through hoops, right? And like contrary to what people want you to believe, like a lot of the scammers and the fraudsters, and again, this is somebody who actively brokers freight. I have talked to multiple carriers today, shippers today already, and they're looking for the path of least resistance. Like there's almost like an annoyance in their voice the more questions we ask. And that's one of those things that I will always rely on. So like, what's the main mission behind this, Marli? Like with going out there with the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub, what's the main mission for you guys?
You're right. Yeah, we are excited about this. It is, like you said, collaborative space where we can give brokers, 3PLs, carriers, shippers, tech providers, they can all come, have practical guidance, trend insights. We have frameworks, guidebooks, shared best practices to basically combat freight fraud, cargo theft. And one thing with it, as we were sharing earlier, we have a nice grouping of founding partners already. So we've got a nonprofit association that's big in the space. We also have some tech providers and some industry suppliers. And then we've had lots of conversations with some larger LTL carriers. So we're really kind of making this nice kind of collaborative space, right, for everyone to be involved, to share their practices and right, because you don't want to give the bad guys more ammunition. So it's almost like that fine line of what can we share, what can we get out there in front of folks, and then by spreading the message of I mean, we have a lot. I think there's like 42 pages in all on this Freight Fraud Prevention Hub that will be going March 3rd. So it really is a robust spot for folks to come.
So is this more of like a content catalog that is out there kind of talking about best practices to really help people out? And then I guess to kind of like piggyback on what we're talking about with SCAC Verified, is there any cross collaboration between those where it's like, because I look at it is the service providers who are out there doing it right, what can they do to stand out? So it's like, is there going to be some content in there where it's like, hey, I am a legitimate provider. I have everything up to date. How do I let the brokers, the shippers know that like, hey, I'm legitimate?
You're right. Yeah, where that SCAC Verify component, like strengthens identity at the source, making sure that person is real, that entity behind that SCAC is verified. That hub kind of expands on that, right? So there was a lot of synergies, and that's why we basically decided to launch around the same time, right? Whenever we first started talking about these initiatives, Joe's like, I think they go live at the same time, which we're like, that makes complete sense. So it's like cross sell too. You'll see, from the SCAC Verified site to the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub, there will be those cross promotions with call to actions and such. And you're right, back to the content of sorts. We've got pages. What is a fictitious pickup? What is pilferage? How can you combat that? So we really are, not only selfishly for SEO, AEO, GEO purposes, right? It's also, again, we have to educate the industry and meet them where they are.
Yeah. Is this something that, there's, obviously without giving away too much, because like I'm right there with you. I say this often when I talk about what are the key indicators I look for and if somebody's, legitimate or not, when I'm questioning some of these providers, I stop talking about it on air because I don't want to give away anything. If you guys see me at a conference, you want to DM me and jump, like I will gladly talk to you off air, offline about that stuff, because it's like, I think sharing those things that I use is only going to enable the fraudsters out there. So it's like, are you guys sharing like patterns in there? Is there, high level legal advice? Like what are those next steps? Like in the event you got taken, is there going to be all of that kind of in there?
So you've kind of hinted to something, I think another component, and that's something that we heard at our conference, and that will be a subject, I think, of another podcast, to be honest.
Love it.
It's a great question, and it's one that we struggled with for about a month. Is okay, this isn't Freight Fraud Prevention Hub, but what about the people that are like, hey, this is how I got hit, and it really did trigger from the conference. So we're going to do yet another launch of another website. Okay. That's really focused on that, not only from a cyber perspective, but also from a freight fraud perspective, where it will be, hey, you're going to pledge to share what's happened to you, but in return, you're going to get what's happened to other people. And that's something that we've got a prototype of right now. We've got our membership meeting here in about a week, starting about a week and a half. And we're going to show it to them, get some input. Yeah. But we should definitely talk about it next time we're together.
No, absolutely. And I think this next question might kind of be for more of that topic as well is talking about, that like the digital vulnerabilities that are out there. And one thing that I'm starting to see an uncomfortable rise in is fictitious shippers emailing transportation providers wanting you to click on a link to provide them data or you got to complete the quote on here. And it's like, I try and remind people all the time, like as somebody who literally cold calls every single day, I have never had a shipper reach out to me and say, hey, click on this link to fill this out. If memory serves me right, I've never even had a shipper reach out to me and be like, hey, could you call me? I want to talk to you about your logistics service. So it's like, I think of those simple red flags that a lot of people overlook. And especially right now when the market has been as depressed as it has for this long, everybody's just looking for something to like, hey, how do I get new business out there? Is that some of those things like of, in this prevention hub that people can really expect about like, hey, these are guys, these companies that are out there are all putting their best foot forward. Like this is kind of like, again, back to that collaboration piece. Is this going to help, kind of talk about that cyber component of this?
Yeah. And that's really what it's meant to be, is where it's a safe place where you can go and talk about, what's happening to you, some best practices, and really what to look out for. One of the things that just came out the other day, and it came out in a website, Have I Been Squatted? It's something called Diesel Vortex, and it's really scary. And we're getting ready. I know one person liked it within the team, but we'll share the article. And it's Russian based, and it's really scary. And we talked to one of the founding members with it, because they were mentioned in the article, and it's like, it looks real. How you really got to know what you're doing to not click on that link. And so that's some of the things that we definitely want to call out and make sure people are aware of. Because again, it's a team sport. And so we want to use that to get that type of information out there so that we can learn from each other.
Do you think we are at the point, I think we are, that they need to start treating this as a matter of national security? Because when we're talking about foreign actors coming in and trying to infiltrate our supply chain, which they pretty much already have, right? Do you think that this is at that point now that like we have to start treating it as such? And again, this is kind of like why I think as a service provider, you need to get your stuff up to date to show like, hey, I'm not associated with this stuff, you guys. Like, I am a legitimate provider. We could sit here and argue all day long about if it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but we got to call balls and strikes. And from my perspective, this is where we are. And I think it's only a matter of time before the current administration will come out and say like, hey, this is a matter of national security at this point. And like, we are going to come down even harder on this. That's why I think that this stuff with fraud and everything is going to get way worse before it gets better. Because I think that when they're already dropping the hammer, when they really drop the hammer at the level that I think it's going to eventually bubble up to, I think that's when we're going to see levels of fraud and cargo theft that is going to make current numbers look like child's play, unfortunately.
Yeah, cyber-enabled cargo theft and just everything with transportation, I would consider that. And, we don't say that lightly because we don't want to be Chicken Little, the tinfoil hat looking guys. But in December, we spent a day on Capitol Hill. We went to the White House. We also had some other meetings in Capitol Hill, and we talked about it. And that's what we said. It's like, hey, I get it. We're not healthcare. We're not tech.
Yeah.
But we're the ones that, this industry, look at how important it is. And what was refreshing was it didn't feel like we had to do convincing. It felt like we get it. We're aware. Let us know what you know. And it was an exchange of ideas. And so a lot of meetings have kept happening since then. So I get the feeling everyone's aware of it. Everybody's now trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
Because it was really obvious with healthcare and some other things, but maybe not as obvious with transportation. Now it seems obvious, but it's just a matter of playing catch up.
Yeah. And, again, and I try not to fearmonger or anything like that on this show, but like I have read a history book or two in my life. And what's the first thing that they used to do back in the day? Like this is modern day supply, cutting out for the supply chains that could potentially happen. And, again, it's like kind of like with everything, we have to be very proactive. Like it's very well documented. Like I know the companies that you guys had listed that are going to be a member of the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub alone. Like there's some very heavy hitters that are associated with that. And I look at it as like as an industry as a whole, and I've said this for years on the show, it's our job to fix this stuff, right? Like it's our job to make sure Capitol Hill is up to date, the DOT is up to date. Like we're the ones on the front lines of this stuff, and and to see the amount of people who are on board with this, and I could only imagine the amount of shippers and manufacturers who are going to get on board with this, right? Because like they're the ones who are ultimately paying for it, not only in loss of cargo, paying of invoices, double paying of invoices, because if a load gets double brokered and all, like there's a massive financial implication that can come down with just one load that could get stolen out there. And it's like, I think that at the end of it, like our customers are going to be relying on us as service providers to step up even more. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be an actual requirement to move freight with companies here in the coming years, where it's going to be like, hey, how can you show that you're legit? You're going to have to essentially show everything, the validity of your organization before they would even give you access to their freight. I think like it's kind of at that point.
Absolutely. I agree.
You're getting me so pumped.
No, but it's, it's like, I care about this because like, I care about people staying in business, like I talk about it ad nauseum on this show. Like it takes so much heavy lifting to get your business off the ground. Then to get it to profitability is a whole other skill set. To just see it get lost and have your entire life's work go away because of I don't want to say it's like mistakes happen, but like there's some preventable steps you can take now to ensure that you're covered and you're taken care of. And I think like with what you guys are doing and really spearheading a lot of this stuff is only going to help it. Like how many individuals I look out there about, the amount of hotshot drivers that I talk to that are non-class 8 that are like, hey, I'm just doing this so I can afford to buy a truck one day. Like think about the validity aspect of that stepping stone that comes along with it, or box trucks, right? They might, or sprinter vans, all of those non-class 8 drivers that are out there, that they're using that as a stepping stone to get up to start hauling 53-foot trailers and stuff like that. Like this is just a natural progression where I think you're going to set yourself up for success 3 years down the road. In the event the DOT is like, hey guys, FYI, your SCAC code better be verified across all things. There's going to be a digital component of this, whether people want to admit it or not. And I always like take that proactive approach and get ahead of it.
Yep.
100%.
Agreed.
All right, Joe, Marli, thank you guys so much for joining. How does anybody reach out to you guys to find out more? Marli, you'd probably be the best one to answer this, to find out more about SCAC Verified and then the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub.
You got it. So scac.nmfta.org, that's where you can find us, or just go to the nmfta.org website, scroll down, and you'll see a little tile there for SCAC. If you click, that's how you get to there. And for the Freight Fraud Prevention Hub, that will be cross-linked on our homepage. We'll also be sending out lots of comms about it. We're very active on LinkedIn, so you can definitely find us there, National Motor Freight Traffic Association, if you search for that in the search bar. So thank you so much for having us.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. And that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys can't find the NMFTA out there for some reason, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in direct contact with them. But that is going to be it. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.